You know all about those amazing and popular JRPGs that you can play on the PlayStation 2, but what about the rarely spoken of and unheard of JRPGs? Today, we're going to talk about 10 of the best JRPGs on the PlayStation 2 that you probably haven't heard of. Everyone has heard of great JRPGs, games like Final Fantasy X, Tales of the Abyss, Dragon Quest VIII, so on and so forth. While these games are all fantastic, and rightly so, they tend to overshadow many of the lesser known JRPGs that are all amazing in their own right. Today, we are going to talk about 10 PlayStation 2 JRPGs that just don't get talked about enough and that you probably haven't heard of. But enough of that talking, I won't waste any more of your time, so let's get into today's video and talk about 10 amazing but obscure PlayStation 2 JRPGs that just don't get enough attention and love. Let's start off with MS Saga: A New Dawn. Released in 2005 by Bandai. I am going to preface this with the fact that I have had no experience with Gundam whatsoever. It's just a series that I never really jumped into. When I was suggested a while back that I try out MS Saga, I was all, okay, but won't I be a bit lost? Turns out that MS Saga really doesn't have much to do with the Gundam series at all, other than using mobile suits from the series. MS Saga is literally just a turn-based JRPG with giant robots. I like giant robots. I like turn-based JRPGs, so why not? I absolutely adore this game, and I'm incredibly surprised that Namco Bandai didn't continue the series and bring out more turn-based Gundam games. Sure, the Versus series and mech sim games are great, but there's just something about having RPGs of popular anime series that hit different. I really love how much customization this game allows for your mechs, as well as the fact that you get to run around a world map like a traditional JRPG. Playing this actually made me miss that feeling of PlayStation 2 JRPGs, and I'm hoping that maybe Namco Bandai will consider bringing this game back in one way or another, because honestly, this is just fun in its purest form. tonelico: Melody of Alamia. Released in 2005 and developed by Gust. tonelico was one of the very first Gust games that I ever had a chance to play, even before I tried out the Atelier series. I remember when I first saw footage of this game and I was immediately taken in by the art style and the turn-based combat. It just spoke to me as it looked like a perfect game for me. However, one thing I did not expect was sim date elements and fan service. Some of that fan service in tonelico is absolutely ridiculous. Nothing as crazy as, say, Senran Kagura or the Dead or Alive games, but instead it's in the dialogue to the point where I'm not aware of how the voice actors managed to do that without bursting into laughter trying to recite these lines. It's honestly great and amusing. Of course, I haven't played this game in 20 years or so maybe it was just me being a bit childish, but still, I found it quite enjoyable. As this is a Gust game, as you might expect, it does include item creation, which, if you've been around the channel long enough, you know that I'm really not a huge fan of this. However, it's more of a background mechanic in tonelico, so it's not as intrusive as it might be in other games. One thing I will mention is this game has a tendency to lag a bit when in both battle and in combat. So it's not just you, it's just the way the game is. Even worse, when playing the second game, there is a boss near the end of the game that will soft lock your game if you don't beat it in 3 turns. It's easy to get around, but it can be annoying, especially if you aren't expecting it. This is one duology that I'm hoping Koei Tecmo can do a remaster of at one point or another, because this series is among my favorites that Gust has to offer. Eternal Poison, released in 2008 by Atlus. Eternal Poison is a dark and gothic style strategy RPG, and honestly, I hadn't played it very much before recording for today's video. I remember playing it way back when it first released, but I had forgotten just how stylish Eternal Poison is. I love this art style, and just the all-over gothic style of the game. Even if those CG cutscenes are absolutely awful by today's standards. Seriously, they just seem so clunky and awfully animated. Yes, I know the game is 17 years old, but jumping back into a game that old and seeing the cutscenes really brings it front and center how much we've progressed in this time period. Anyways, Eternal Poison is kind of unique in the sense that, firstly, the overkill mechanic is like something I've never seen before. When you overkill an enemy, you will bind them. When you bind an enemy, you can capture them, and then you can either summon them in later battles, or you can sacrifice them to extract skills or PP. I kind of love this mechanic, but there's one other mechanic that Eternal Poison has that I don't really love nearly as much. There's this mechanic called Demon Aura that I just can't stand. When an enemy has a Demon Aura, they are invincible until you hit their weakness. Once you hit a weakness and bring down that Demon Aura, you can attack them like normal. This can be frustrating because if you aren't able to hit that weakness, it makes the battle impossible to finish. Luckily, it's usually a type of physical attack, but still it just seems like a mechanic to extend the length of battles and results in trial and error. Though even with that mechanic, Eternal Poison is an obscure RPG and absolutely deserves to be talked about more often. Khemia, released in 2008 by Gust. Khemia is actually a spin-off of the Atelier series. However, what makes Khemia differ from the Atelier series is it takes place in a school and is heavily quest-based. Each quest, which is called an assignment, usually requires you to create an item or defeat an enemy for a material, which is pretty basic, but unlike Atelier, Khemia is much more focused on story as opposed to just characters and their interactions. Honestly, I prefer this to Atelier in the sense that I find Vane incredibly amusing, due to how he just has that I don't really know what you're talking about, and honestly, I don't really care to learn about it vibe. Like art tonelico, there's just something about the art style and the way that you move around in each new area that gives a unique feel that other JRPGs just don't capture. Some might call it budget, and it's the same game over and over, but Khemia captures that school aspect perfectly, and it gives it a feeling like no other JRPG from that time. I will mention that Khemia is also on PSP by the name of Khemia Student Alliance and has some extra features like ad hoc multiplayer to get rare items, but you want to avoid that version even with the new feature because the load times are atrocious. If you enjoy the classic Atelier games, but want something that gives a bit of a unique experience, Khemia might be the game for you, and if not, it has a kitty, so that's always a plus. Radiata Stories, released in 2005 by Tri-Ace. Tri-Ace is one of those companies where each one of the games they put out is banger after banger, and Radiata Stories is no different. Radiata Stories is an action JRPG where you follow the story of aspiring knight Jack Russell. I actually recently played through Radiata Stories, and while the gameplay is aged like milk, it's a story that really kept me interested. Sure, it's that typical humans versus non-humans that's been done time and time again, but about halfway through the story, you get to pick a side, either the human side or the non-human side, giving the game a reason to play through twice, which is always nice if you're looking for replay value. And I won't even get into the fact that you have hundreds of characters you can recruit. Radiata Stories does have one mechanic though that I wish you could see in more games. Well, most of the NPCs are amazing and fantastic, and you'll probably love each and every one of them. If you really don't care for an NPC, you can kick them. First time you kick them, they'll get annoyed with you. Kick them again, and you get to fight them. This is almost every NPC too. From that soldier that's just wandering the streets, to that kid running laps around town, or even the town grandma. I found this incredibly entertaining, and I just found it hilarious that you can fight almost everyone in the game, and usually, they'll beat the daylights out of you. I'd love a remake of this game to modernize the gameplay, but otherwise it's still 100% worth playing if you haven't already. Musashi Samurai Legend, released in 2005 by Square Enix. Yes, I know, people don't like this game, and I hear it's nowhere near as good as the first game. However, I want to preface this by saying I have not played Brave Fencer Musashi at this time. It's on my list to play by the end of the year, but at this time, I haven't had a chance to play it yet. As someone who hasn't played Brave Fencer Musashi, Samurai Legend Musashi is wonderful. I adore the painted anime art style it seems to have with those thick black outlines, as well as the way that cutscenes are portrayed. And the gameplay, yeah, I'll admit, it does start out slow, like really slow, with only a basic combo, but it has this mechanic where if you target an enemy long enough and press attack at just the right time, you can learn enemy techniques. Kind of like a warrior blue mage if it was from the Final Fantasy series. This is actually super cool and I love this mechanic. It makes meeting new enemies interesting. As you look forward to the next skill, you'll get to learn from each new enemy. However, there is one thing in this game that annoys the heck out of me. It's the camera. It's not that it makes things hard to see or it goes into weird angles, it's the fact that the game's camera is reversed, and I don't think there's any way to change the orientation of it. So pressing up makes the camera go down, down makes it go up, left makes it go right, and right makes it go left. This is incredibly annoying, and I hate it with a bloody passion. I get that you're moving the actual camera in that direction, so it seems reversed, but I'm so used to it being the other way around that it annoys the heck out of me. Other than that though, Samurai Legend Musashi is a beautiful game and definitely worth playing. And if the first game is so good that it makes this one look bad, I'm quite curious to see just how amazing that game is. Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, released by Atlus in 2005. While the Shin Megami Tensei series as a whole is popular, I feel like most people only know about the Persona series or the main Shin Megami Tensei series. But there are several other sub-series within Shin Megami Tensei that don't get the love they deserve, such as Devil Summoner and Digital Devil Saga. Truthfully, I think the second Digital Devil Saga might have been the first Shin Megami Tensei game I ever played. I remember buying it from a music store having no idea what in the world it was. This was before the days of Persona being popular, and I just thought it was a dark and dreadful JRPG. While I'm not entirely wrong, I had no idea what I was getting into. The first Digital Devil Saga is unlike any other RPG that I have ever played, and because of this, it's really difficult to explain what it is exactly. The game takes place in this virtual combat simulator known as the Junkyard, with 6 different emotionless tribes: the Embryon, which your party is part of, the Vanguards, the Solids, the Marable, the Brutes, and the Wolves, all holding a specific territory. Early on in the story, a demon virus infects everyone and causes them to awaken to emotions, which leads to the members of the tribe devouring people from other tribes. Like I said, it's dark, it's dreadful, and I love it. If you're looking for a JRPG that avoids anime cliches, then you might want to check out the lesser-known Digital Devil Saga series. Shadow Hearts, released in 2001 by Saknoth. This is another series that seems to only be mentioned by the most diehard of diehard JRPG fans, and more often than not, I hear people say that they've never heard about it, which is why I say it qualifies as obscured, though I feel there are going to be several people in the comments saying it's not at all obscure. That's okay, and that's why I love you all. We all play different games. Anyways, Shadow Hearts is a game that I adore for several reasons. Firstly, that setting. Shadow Hearts is a horror JRPG, which is something we don't see enough these days, and it takes place in an alternate reality 1913 all over Europe and China, as well as having those supernatural aspects to it, such as demons and angels. But the real reason I wanted to mention this game is because of the battle system. The battle system revolves around the Judgment Ring system. The Judgment Ring system requires you to press X at just the right time to enable critical effects on your attacks, and it's just such a great and engaging way to have a battle system. It's kinda similar to JRPGs like Super Mario RPG and Legend of Dragoon. On top of that, your main hero Yuri can transform into demons and enable extra abilities and do more damage. It's just a fantastic game, and it might be one of the least obscure games on this list, but it's still one of the lesser known series. I will mention that there was a spiritual successor on Kickstarter called Pennyblood, and it did meet its goals, but at this time they're still trying to find a publisher. I really hope they can find one, because honestly, it has such a fantastic concept, and it would fill that gap of horror JRPGs that we have suffered as of late. Mega Man X Command Mission, released in 2001 by Capcom. Did you know that the Mega Man series got a fully functional turn-based JRPG? No, I'm not talking about the Battle Network games, but you should totally play those too. Mega Man X Command Mission was a traditional style turn-based JRPG, and honestly, it's way better than it has any right to be. I know Mega Man in general is not very obscure. In fact, it's probably one of the most popular franchises in all of gaming history. And when people think of RPGs within the franchise, people probably instantly think about the Battle Network series. So, Command Mission is one of those games that is obscure as far as games within the franchise goes. Command Mission features popular characters from the franchise such as X, Zero, and Axel. Yes, I know Axel isn't popular, but you know what, just go with it. However, it also features new characters like Spider, Marino, and Cinnamon. The story is nothing to write home about, and is about as two-dimensional as a regular Mega Man X game, but the combat is just another one of those that prevents you from just mashing a button until the battle is over. You can equip sub-weapons and regular weapons, as well as having transformations to increase your effectiveness. Much like the previously mentioned Shadow Hearts, you get to also input other commands in order to increase damage of your skills. This can range from holding a button for your charge shot, pressing buttons in the correct order, or even mashing a button as fast as possible to increase the damage multiplier. With that being said, I absolutely love this game. Sure, that might be because I love the Mega Man franchise, but this game on its own is still a great JRPG that very few people talk about. And lastly, we have Wild Arms 5, released in 2007 by Xseed. I love the Wild Arms series. I always have and I always will. Sadly, this is another series as a whole that often goes under the radar and people just don't talk about. Again, probably not the most obscure game on the planet, but it's obscure enough that no one ever talks about it. And honestly, that's a crime. Or maybe I just wanted to use the bang and battle theme during this video. Regardless, Wild Arms 5 needs more love, and that's what I am here for. Wild Arms 5 was the last real mainline title for Wild Arms, and the series more or less died after this game. Let's be honest, I don't think anyone has actually played or even heard of the strategy RPG released on the PSP. If there's another genre that is obscure and has been disappearing, it's JRPGs that take place in a traditional cowboy western setting. Wild Arms didn't do anything super substantial to move the JRPG setting along, but it does have an absolutely beautiful map to explore and an amazing set of characters, and those story moments will get you all choked up. Much like Shadow Hearts, Wild Arms has a spiritual successor that was successfully kickstarted. However, this one seems like it's going along smoothly. Initially, it was said to come out this year, but I don't think that's going to happen with what's been shown so far. With that being said, if you are one of those people who hasn't played Wild Arms 5, or the Wild Arms series in general, please do yourself a favor and play it, because it's one of those series that doesn't deserve to be left in the dark. By the way, you can play the first 3 games on PlayStation Plus, so hint hint, nudge nudge, get to it. So there you have it, 10 obscure JRPGs that you probably haven't heard of. Sure, some of them aren't the most obscure, but they are still pretty obscure in their own right. Did I miss any obscure games that you would suggest people play? And would you like this to become a series? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to talk about other obscure JRPGs. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support what I do here. And if you want to check out even more of my content, make sure you check out this video before you head off for the day. This has been Chinky. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, have a wonderful day.